All right, so yesterday it appears that we had a huge explosion of the internet talking about requests per second. And I think this is pretty amazing, kind of some of the things that were stated on here. And so I just want to kind of like look through these and try to understand them. For me, it all started right here. And this is kind of where I left it, and I thought this would be great to just look at and try to figure out what we're even looking at on the internet, because it seemed like all the responses were kind of wild. One thing that's kind of an interesting point of view is that there's an entire section of the internet, we're going to call them antis, where no matter what somebody says, they will find a way to respond as negatively as possible to it. Don't be an anti, okay? Second off, Basecamp did 5,250 requests per second at its peak yesterday. Mean response time was 90 milliseconds, which is pretty good. That's very, very fast. The SLA on producing your list of movies at Netflix was 400 milliseconds last time I was there. So this is really, really good. So call that needed 500 cores. Let's see. So call that needed 500 cores at max load. If you skipped redundancy, you could probably do that with 3 boxes, each running a Z5 192 core AMD chip with room to spare. Servers have gotten crazy fast. So this is very true. CPUs are very, very fast these days. The new CPU stuff is extremely fast. Casey and I, we did like what? A hour-long discussion on CPUs where he goes through all the coolest stuff with Zen 5. They are extremely fast. 3 boxes with lots of backends. What was the P95 response time? He does not talk about the P95 response time, so I don't know what the P95 response time, but the P50 is really good. 90 milliseconds is really, really good. Now, obviously, there must be something kind of, this must be time, when he says the response time was 90 milliseconds, this must be time on their servers, not including any of the latency between computers, which I think that makes sense, right? We're not actually measuring the distance of you trying to travel out to somebody's computer. We're just talking about within what he can, something in which he can control. This is how fast it was going. Yeah, not round trip. Yeah, time to first byte. Oh, does it say that? Mean response time. Oh, is it really time to first byte? It could be time to first byte. You're right. Mean response time. It could very well be. Let's see. Even if you are using a sled with more pedestrian 2x EPYC 9454 setup, you'd get 96 cores per server. So you'd need just 5 of them for the load. Of course, you still have to think about redundancy, job running, databases, etc. But in terms of app compute, it's very cheap. That's all a Basecamp, a business doing tens of millions of dollars in ARR. I'd wager that 99% of B2B SaaS doesn't do nearly as many RPS and could thus get away from even less compute. In fact, I'd be surprised if 95% couldn't be served off a single beefy server. I generally agree with the statement. But let me kind of give you like my general take on this, which is there's kind of 2 camps right now that exist, which I think is kind of silly. The 2 camps that exist are we'll call this one Camp 1 over here, which is going to be like levels. We'll call it levels in DHH. Camp 2 is going to be like Vercel. And Vercel is going to have a certain curve that what you have in life, my assumption is Dax actually lives somewhere in the middle, and he tries to give you the power to do all the scaling you want, probably closer to this side than this side, but just allows you to have all the engineering. But we'll ignore Dax for now, okay? Dax, get the hell out of here, Dax. Get out of here. All right. Vercel gives you the ability to have really cheap infinite scale. But then when you infinite scale, well, it can get really expensive. Whereas with this approach, you have a uniform bill, but you have to pay for it in dev time. But I'm also not convinced, hear me out on this one, I am not convinced that this is dev free time. I don't know if you can trade this dev time to manage 3-4 machines, a database and stuff like that, is not a perfect trade-off to using this type of service. I use Vercel as the example. It doesn't necessarily mean Vercel. I'm just using it as an example. And so I don't think that that's true. I think there's some percentage of trade-off, 20%, maybe 15% of the time you can let go, or maybe it's 50% of the time you don't have to spend. But you do have to spend some amount of time managing this stuff. 90% of apps don't need infinite scale. I think 99% of apps don't need infinite scale, right? There's also admin costs, which you're outsourcing to cloud. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. All of that is that you have dev and people running the things, or you let somebody else run them. There's an inherent difference between the resource required for your JS CRUD API reading some squeal light with 0 real customers and what is required for an API of a real business with thousands of customers. Also factual. No, I think we all agree with that. I didn't know, I don't know how a company worth 10 million ARR feels comfortable running with little to none of these mechanics for resilience and recovery needed for site reliability. I don't know what you mean. He never said any of those things. So this is one of those things that is always very surprising. He does use terms right here, redundancy, right? He uses terms running jobs in the background, databases. I think all those things are there. It's just not infinitely there. I think that's the trade-off he's saying he makes, which is we have a level of redundancy that we believe is comfortable for, say, 4 nines, right? Oh my goodness, nice nines. Maybe he has 4 nines of uptime, and that's okay. Maybe he doesn't need 5 nines of uptime, and that's fine. Managing a database is very hard. I agree. Managing databases is most certainly difficult. So SquealLite is not used in real businesses. SquealLite's used all over the place. I think SquealLite's actually fantastic. 4 nines is plenty to be, let's be honest. 4 nines is most of what people need. And so I think this stuff is all kind of just very interesting. It's a very interesting world that we're currently living in because it feels like a dichotomy that has been set up where either you use one and you are good and you have a business that can scale, or you use the other and you're a fool. And somehow I just don't feel like that's the case. I'm not trying to tell people to go this route. I think you should go the route in which you can build the best application with the best error handling and the best non-happy path you can possibly build. It's strange that there's not an affordable software deployment platform that provides 4 to 5 nines out of the box. Well, it is. In some sense, Vercel is that. It's just that once you scale really high, it's really hard. You gotta remember that when you scale when you actually have real scale, either you're paying for it for somebody else to manage it, or you're paying for you to hire somebody and manage it for you. So DHH must be the guy who did 100 startups with jQuery. No. That's Levels. Levels did it with this. DHH is the Ruby guy, and here we go. So this is very interesting right here. So let's go into it. So hopefully we're going to get something. Doesn't really mean anything in terms of performance, considering we don't know what each request is doing. A single core can send 8 to 10,000 messages per second on a simple node plus socket IO. By the way, socket IO is crazy setup. Obviously, that's not what's done here. Let's see. You can see exactly what it does by using Basecamp. This obviously isn't a hello world example. One request may well be rendering 1,000 to-dos or showing you a calendar full of events. This is a real SaaS app. Requests rather than benchmarking jockeying. This is so good, by the way. I think this benchmark jockeying that we've done is one of the most destructive ways to measure if something is good or bad in the universe. Okay? Nobody cares that your hello world can do 100,000 requests per second. Okay, I literally don't care. Because often those things that you're doing these really amazing bench requests for, they happen over the course of, say, like 10 seconds. You have no idea what garbage collection's doing. You don't know what database calls and your async nature of all your requests are going to be doing. As your event loop, say in Node, gets just jam-packed with all sorts of different response times, how does that affect your 90 percentile, your 95 percentile, your 99 percentile response times? It's just like such a vacuumed way to look at stuff. And if you ever, for any reason, consider one thing better than another based off of a hello world example, you are being dumb, okay? Or shall I say, you are being inexperienced. Yeah, it's not hello world, it's hell world. I'm not so impressed by tech Levels uses, but by how he makes money with those sides. Yeah, I mean, you should be impressed by the tech he uses because it's simple. Let's see, server-side rendering those to-do lists and calendar events, client-side rendering could potentially reduce load times even further. Yeah, but then you still have to offload all of that into a client that can respond to it and all that. It takes a lot of effort to do that. This is a non-trivial amount of work. Let's see. So negative Nancy, 90 milliseconds seems insane if local. 5,000 requests over 5,000 cores. I mean, obviously that's not anything he just said. So this is what I mean by being an anti, is that he clearly stated that Basecamp yesterday served peak traffic 5,000 requests a second. It's spread across 500 cores. I mean, Ruby is not fast. Ruby is just it's not fast. But like why you got to be such an anti? You know what I mean? Obviously this is not local. 5,000 requests, 90 milliseconds for response time is for the median is fantastic. It's not fast, but in 2024 you can throw hardware at it. You can. But also 500 cores for 5,000 requests per second is also not insane. I mean, the hard part I have with a lot of these things is I recently measured React server components, and I could not get it to exceed 4 requests per second on a larger amount of rendered items. So it's like, and that was local testing. So I get it. This is doing about 10. This is obviously doing 10 requests per second. And this isn't doing, my example was doing no database. I was doing nothing but just the basics here. This is doing a lot of databases. This is doing a lot of like actually rendering, because rendering a calendar is quite a bit of effort, right? Let's see, I would consider that unacceptable. 90 milliseconds, like what is this? Anyone here thinks 90 milliseconds is unreasonable for a calendar to be resolved? 90 milliseconds is fucking good? Yeah. 90 milliseconds, what are these people on? I see, it's just such a strange way to put these things together. It takes 80 milliseconds. It takes 80 milliseconds to realize you stubbed your toe. I just don't understand how people who have shipped 0 products can criticize anything. I call this the refs, right? Refs are people who sit on the sideline and watch a basketball game get played. They know nothing of the lows of losing. They know nothing of the highs of winning. They just simply sit there and call things out, and that's it. And the worst part is that in basketball, there's a defined set of rules. In engineering, there are no rules, right? There is absolutely no, you can't, like in basketball, if you dribble and hold onto a ball, you cannot dribble again. It's a definite rule, right? You cannot cross that line. With an engineering, I can choose Ruby, I can choose Rust, I can choose Go, I can choose Node, I can literally use Perl. And so it's like, the rules are way different. You know the rules, and so do I. Okay. And so there's just these refs that run around the sideline just being like, tweet, I've never done that, but that's wrong. I can tell right away. I can tell 90 milliseconds. This is the worst, actual worst. No one literally uses Perl. Literally the power grid of America runs on Perl. So yes, people literally use Perl. All right, buddy. Oh, I was joking, dude. Classic. Oh, I was joking. I was... Anyways, okay, so, all right, so let's look at some of the, I want to kind of look at some of the other things before we go on. Let's see, the new, I could build this in a weekend just dropped. I could run your entire SaaS with tens of millions in ARR on my laptop. The internet is amazing, and more so than among the Hello World benchmark jockeys. Buddy, you could accomplish this on a single system with fast enough storage and RAM. So, here's where these things kind of get difficult. You theoretically could. And what I mean by that is that if you got all the right people to get in there and highly optimize the application, potentially rewrite everything in Rust and have it or Rust or Zig, or even potentially even Go, and get it as perfectly tuned as possible, you could probably drop significantly the amount of cores you're asking to use. My guess is that you could probably bring this down to 25 cores in a proper language, or in C, right? One that's designed to be super, super fast. But I think that's the whole point of this, which is that he's saying, where is it? Where's the word? I know he says the word luxury somewhere, doesn't he? That effectively what he's saying is that it's luxury, the ability to be able to send to be able to use a language that is inherently inefficient, and you can serve with relatively low ease a high amount of requests per second and make tens of millions of dollars off of hundreds of dollars a month in server costs. Did he say he needed 500 cores? Is that what he just said? So that's another thing that people weren't looking with room to spare, meaning that he's saying he could probably go higher. I think that's what he's saying. Anyways, I think in the end, a lot of people don't realize the complication of building bigger apps. You got to remember that Basecamp is also an application that has been running and being built over the course of a long period of time. And it's very easy to rebuild something in a very small way and show that it's fast. It's really hard to build a whole application and show that it's fast. And so it's a very interesting thing. People took his peak and max load core number and put them together. Yes. Anyways, I think this stuff is very, very interesting because it's so wild, the backlash that both DHH and Levels receives, despite most people not making businesses as big or as profitable as either. And the thing is, if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, look at this! I have $1 million," like Theo's upload thing. I give zero craps that it's ran off of Next.js. It works, right? I'm not here to tell him how to live his life. If that thing went from costing a little bit to costing him, $100,000 a month, I'm going to say, well, you chose the wrong thing for whatever reason. I don't see it costing him that much due to how it was built, but it's kind of ridiculous, like how much people get so worked up over each thing. Like I get zero work up about this, and I get zero worked up about the opposite side, the Vercel side. Like you can do whatever you want. I just personally like the challenge of building something that's fast. Like something about that makes me feel good. And I would call that the artisan in me, right? The person that wants to build a really good product. And some people want to build a really good product and they measure their goodness of the product, say, based on how much money they're making. Like Levels.io, right? He's making products in which I would probably not call this an artisan product. Can we all agree to that? And I think he would agree with it very, very much so. But his North Star is making money. My North Star right now is just becoming really, really good at a lot of technology. Yeah, the dopamine gotcha rush, yeah. You're around web devs when people start arguing about 2x performance improvements by changing the language. There is virtually no other. I mean, there is some backend. 1 million checkboxes talks about this, which is the 1 million. I guess you could still call this web dev, but having a server in Python and going from Python to Go was literally a 10x improvement. But again, that's just using a language that's better designed for this stuff. We just live in a weird world in which we have the ability to choose a language in which is inherently inefficient for the trade-off of feeling nice to program. That's a really weird world because in, like, say, the game development world, you kind of do, but almost any larger, more like graphically intense game, they don't have that choice. They can't just be like, I'm writing this graphically intense game in JavaScript. Like if you're painting some images on a canvas, sure, you can do that. But doing anything beyond that, you're pretty much bound to C++. It's a weird world. Indie dev games are in JS. Yeah, that's because you can, because they're not doing something that's really intense. Any indie game dev that's doing non-trivial stuff, they're all built with Unity. They're all built with some other thing, right? And Unity being probably one of the more big hogs of memory and having a very difficult time scaling beyond that. Like Tarkov. Tarkov has been notoriously known for poor performance, and a lot of that has been just given to the fact that Unity is very difficult. Right? Godot mentioned potentially, yeah. Lua is often used in game dev, not for the game itself, though there are some. Lua is often used for the UI because it's really easy to embed into a C++ engine and very easy to be able to update and change because of the what's it called? The dynamic nature of Lua. Does anyone even think C++ and JS servers serve the same purpose? Yeah, they don't. And you should never do that. The thing that makes JavaScript so great is the fact that you can provide a script and it runs. There's no compilation. There's no requiring certain libraries to be able to even have it compile on your system. Long as you either have Node or it's in a browser, it just runs. It has its own sandboxed environment. You're unlikely to get absolutely pwned through JavaScript. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying it's unlikely. And so that's one thing that's really beautiful about JavaScript. You have an application that is hard to update. Let's say an embedded device or something like that. You use Lua, you use a JavaScript, one of these dynamic languages. You can update it by sending a new script there, and then its UI can be slightly updated, and you don't have to have somebody actually do a full update. That's the beauty of JavaScript. That's the beauty of Lua, and that's really why I really like it a whole bunch, is the ability to have that. Has Prime Watch reacted to Jonathan Blow video saying games shouldn't use scripting languages like Lua? I just genuinely think he's wrong overall on that. I think UIs are best written in simple languages, and you can do a lot of the Chrome really easy, right? Game menus, stuff like that. I think that's just easier. Now, the actual game itself can be all that. But when you're like in matchmaking and you want a nice matchmaking, like think about how many game options and servers and stuff like that are absolute horse garbage. Like just horse turds in a pasture. Most game menus are absolutely just the worst. They take like 17 clicks to get through anything. And so, yeah, throwing that crap in a little bit of Lua, make it really easy to throw up a couple triangles and text and checkboxes. It's just much nicer just to have something that's simple that you can go and update really easily. Right? But the game menu has a swoosh. How many days to learn Lua? I'd say you could learn Lua, if you're already familiar with the C-based language, you could learn Lua in an hour and a half. If you really try, not bad. Brendan, Greg, and I had an internal discussion at Netflix. We started an internal podcast that became We Are Netflix. The internal podcast has a discussion between Brendan, Greg, and I. And Lyle Troxel. Very, very good. I absolutely loved it. Use NeoVim and Lua is completed. Yeah. Yeah. This is the reason, right? This is the reason why you like JavaScript. I know a lot of people say they like to use TypeScript and all this stuff. I don't necessarily agree with this. Yeah, we use TypeScript to make those advantages go away. I don't think TypeScript makes all those advantages go away. Not at all. Not actually at all. But the reason why you like TypeScript is very, very simple. Let me show you. Let's pretend this was TypeScript for a second. I go like this. Const foo equals an object, an array, a string, a number. Right? Like you can just create heterogeneous lists. This is a very powerful thing to do. Oh, I want an object. I just want properties. I can just do that. Right? That's a very powerful thing to do, and it makes UIs really easy to program because you don't have to have the express knowledge of everything. You can just run with stuff. Very simple. Right? And so I don't want to dog on it for that. Right? But Lua's one indexed. Yeah, that's fine. Again, everything comes down to your ability to work with the language, and you can do one index. Okay, so anyways, I wanted to talk about this RPS thing because I just mainly want people to stop being such antis. You know, if DHH chooses to do this, like, let me rephrase it this way. DHH serves 5,000 requests per second with 90 milliseconds median time for Basecamp, let's just say at 500 cores. This costs him $1,000 a month. It's like me having a discussion with my kid over his sister doing something that bothers him despite it not affecting him. Does this affect you? No. Does this affect the world? No. Does this mean anything to you? No. Let him be happy about this. Okay, cool. Bro makes $10+ million a year off of 500 CPU cores. He employs people, pays them money. There's people that happily work at Basecamp and make a lot of money. Awesome. Just let it go. Because I am not going to write Ruby. I'm going to write Go or Rust or Zig or anything else. Because I can't do that because I feel emotionally bruised when I do that. But that's up to him. Or PHP. I'll write it in PHP. Okay? Easy as that. Just stop with the weird hate on the Twitters. Move on. Have fun. Have fun with life a little bit more. Just if you can beat him, then beat him. Build a better product. If you think that he's truly doing it wrong, like all these Andys in here that are just like, oh, I can't even believe this. Buddy, you could accomplish this with a single system with fast enough storage RAM. Okay, James, build it better. Make it awesome. Because honestly, if you can build a dramatically better product because you believe you can build a better product, you will win the market. You eventually will. That's the beautiful part about SaaS, is that if you make a really good product, you will start winning share. The thing is, I don't think you can. I don't think I can do it either, right? I don't think I could build a better calendar system at any reasonable amount. Less yapping, more action. Let's go. The name is the Yapogen.